Rafael.
Hello, can you hear me okay? I
I
believe you do.
can.
Awesome, great. Let me start sharing my screen so we are all set. Just a second. Yep, I think we're good. Okay, so thanks Jenna and thanks guys for giving me the time to talk more about the how to design test automation as a service to a QA platform. The whole idea here is to bring a different way of setting up test automation throughout our companies and organizations with more of a self-service approach. And I'm gonna give you guys a little background on why that is important and why we should do that first. Uh, so that's kind of the initial step, and then we are going to move forward to give you guys some kind of game plan so you can start planning and putting together a QA platform with what you already have. You're going to notice that I'm not going to talk about specific tools or frameworks because that's not the goal here. The goal is to give you guys some insight in a different way of putting together how we set up test automation on our day-to-day. So I'm gonna introduce myself first. You probably seen myself in the previous presentation. Larissa is my wife, so you probably seen that. You probably know that we have 12 dogs and 11 chihuahuas, and you may see one of them around the presentation. Hopefully, they will not bark too much, and you won't hear them in the background. But I have a lot of experience, mostly with QA and DevOps, and mostly trying to tie them together. That's why I talk a lot about test automation and how to make it easier and better for whoever needs to automate. Whether if it's automating test data, if it's automating the actual test cases, or if it's automating test environments, or in any way tools and processes that can help us have a more self-service approach, which will lead us having a QA platform. So I have a lot of experience with banking and insurance markets, which is usually where we see a lot of initiatives starting focus on testing automation, and usually the big banks and big insurance companies, they believe that we need to automate everything, and it needs to happen at the end-to-end piece of testing right at the end where we mimic the user. So that's why I like to bring the different approach of creating a platform and something that will kind of start and connect the dots so we can move forward. I also have experience with Agile. I have been a Scrum Master in the past, so I also know a lot about processes, and I try to mix all that at different experience. So we bring something different, because in some cases we hear a lot about QA, we hear a lot about DevOps, and we hear a lot about Agile methodologies, but it's different when you try to put everything together and make kind of a platform in a way that we can use it within our project. And usually my main challenge on my day-to-day and with the companies that I work for, especially CI&T today, is helping some customers trying to not having to get rid of everything they have, because they already have some kind of framework, they already have some kind of automation, they already have some kind of tool, but those things are always disconnected. They are not connected in a way that somebody can use it as a self-service way, because if I'm a QA, if I'm a tester, if I'm a developer, I don't want to learn everything about automating specific data, how to put it together, some kind of user or some kind of debit card or some kind of specific test data that I need for my test or for my development. I need to be able to develop and to deliver code to my end user. I need to be able to make sure that I can test. And I really don't have to worry about every little detail of the environment, about every little detail of everything. So that's kind of the experience that I bring to the talk, and I'll be talking a lot with examples and try to bring a lot of my experience implementing some of those things throughout my career. So a little bit about history and background, why we are talking about platform. What exactly am I saying when we are creating a QA platform? So looking at some literature, basically everything started around 2009 when we say, okay, we need 10 deployments per day with AWS or with Google, and things start progressing. And we kept talking about continuous delivery and continuous deployment. And QA has a strong piece on that. Test automation has a strong piece on that scenario, because things g- start getting larger and larger by the minute. Because if we have more deployments, if we have more frequent releases, I also have more frequent testing. And I know testing needs to go beyond just the end to end at the end of the flow, but you also need to look at unit testing and integration and component and so on. But usually we know that the real world is a bit different, and usually we are not starting projects from scratch. We are not getting to companies which are just startups that are just born. We are usually in larger projects which already has a test suite, which already has some kind of test automation running. So the whole idea of a platform is connected to the 2019 Team Topologies book, which talks a lot with a connection between how we set up our teams and how we make sure that the teams have the necessary tools and process that they need in place, so they can get better at lead time, which is how fast we get things to production, to make sure that we increase deployment frequency, that we also make sure that once something goes wrong, we have enough time or a proper time to actually restore a service, and that also that we manage our change fail percentage, so it's kept on a low level. And the whole thing here is that QA is on the center of all this, because if I want to have a better lead time, if I want to have more deployments, if I want to make sure that I don't have enough failures, I need to make sure that QA is done properly. And that automation is a big part of that, because of volume. Because as we get better at executing deployments, as we have more deployments and more releases, the amount of testing that we need to do, it also gets bigger. So that's why we need to start thinking as a platform, and as a platform which ends up being a product. So we are now pretty much creating a product for our developers and for our testers and for our teams. And basically, why we're doing that, why I'm taking the time to talking right now about how can we make test automation easier, how can we create a QA platform, how does that help on our day to day. And basically the whole idea is because of three different cognitive loads, and that's basically psychology. I'm not talking about technology right now, but you will understand why. So usually when we are trying to learn something or we are trying to execute a task, we usually should be simplifying our intrinsic cognitive load. That basically translates into new information that we are acquiring. And usually new information leads to some kind of complexity, because you need to absorb that new information. You probably need to translate it into something that you can use. So the whole idea is, if I'm building test automation, if I'm building test cases, if I'm building test data, it shouldn't be something that every team needs to learn how to do it. It needs to be something that is centralized in some kind of platform, that it doesn't matter really what does that specific test data, what does that environment. It needs to be something that I can push a button or have a small and really simple process that is going to give me what I need to be able to do what I need to do. If it's executing a test, if it's executing several tests on an automation pipeline, if it's making sure that a bug in production has been fixed. So the whole idea is, first you need to simplify new information. Then you need to reduce the extrinsic cognitive load, which is the way new information and tasks are presented to a learner. So imagine you have a series of teams and of developers and QA folks, and then they all need to learn how to automate. They all need to learn how to use a test automation framework that we have in place. That's gonna make it harder for them, because they're gonna need to understand how everything connects, how everything works, what you have put in place into the framework, how to use every different piece of your framework. And at the end of the day, the only thing they need to do, or the objective that they are trying to achieve, is to test something. It's to make sure that whatever product they are building, it's actually working. So the whole idea here is to make sure that those things are easier for them to do, so they can focus on what matters, which is delivering a better product, delivering something that will make it easier for our users. And usually we want to maximize the germane cognitive load, which is the whole point that I just mentioned, that you give them the tools, you make sure that how to use the tools, how to use the framework, how to use the data, how to use the environments are so easy that they will be able to focus on thinking outside the box, to be able to do innovation, to be able to really focus on test strategy and making sure that they are efficient on what they are doing, to make sure that they are actually thinking about the product and not how they are trying to test the product, because they need to do some kind of test data, or because they need to understand how to use a framework, or because they need to create several scenarios. And just to be able to create the scenarios, they need to learn a whole new framework. And then basically, when we are trying to build a platform, we have three, actually we have a little more, but I'm going to focus on three different teams, which are what we usually see in our day to day, which are the string aligned teams, which is usually the product feature teams. Those are the teams who are usually developing a product. So they are usually the team who is developing a system, or a banking system, or an insurance system, or whatever kind of system that is actually delivering features to the users. Then we have the enabling teams. Enabling teams are usually teams who will help our product teams to overcome obstacles and barriers. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about the enabling teams in a second, but I want to talk a little bit first about the platform teams. The platform teams is usually the teams, or group of teams in some cases, who will develop a product, which is the platform, which will facilitate and accelerate what the product teams need to do. So imagine that we want to make sure that the product teams have a strong test automation framework, so they can use it and they can automate tasks. Usually the platform team is the team who is either going to design the framework, or are going to pick up the framework which already exists, and making sure that it can be used in a self-service manner, or in an easier manner than making sure that everyone learns the framework. And usually in my experience, we have a kind of a mixed scenario between enabling teams and platform teams, because usually the enabling teams, they are not the ones who are going to develop the platform, but they are usually the ones who will go to the product teams and making sure that they adopt the product that you're using, especially at first, because different from a new product that everyone knows or goes to a link and they know that there is a new system there. When you are developing something that the developers will use, the QA team will use, or the QA folks will use, you need to go to them and make sure that they understand how to use it, why they are going to use it, and also to collect feedback so you can make sure that you get better in the future. So I'm going to quickly talk about the definition of platform. The whole idea comes from Amazon, where everything that they do, or every tool they put in place, it's kind of an API catalog of tools, services, knowledge, and support services, where that goes into service manner. What usually that means is everything that they do, either if it's a tool or a service or whatever it is, it needs to be self-service. So I don't need to need to learn a specific framework to use it, or to do whatever I need to do. And the whole idea of the product, of putting together a platform as a product, and understanding that your user is now a developer or a QA, is making sure that the product is so reliable, so interesting, and make it so easier for them to use, that you won't have to every time making sure that they are going to use it, or forcing them to use it. We are not talking about a framework that is usually the case in our day to day, that you need to make sure that you need to force the users to use it. You need to force test automation. The whole idea is to make it so easy that they will want to use it. And the whole idea is to make sure that we have less cognitive effort, so they don't need to learn everything, just focus on what is important for them. We will be able to give them more autonomy, but also with some responsibility. We will need to be able to scale things, because everything is starting to be self-service. The whole idea is that, as even though I have more teams and more squads and people working with me, they will be able to access this centralized platform and be able to execute the tests, generate test data, provision test environments, everything they need to be able to test, automate, and to be able to execute their test at the end. And one important point here is to not forget about dev experience. So usually what I hear a lot is, I have an extremely well designed framework. You can check this 300-page documentation on how to use it. Come on. If I'm a new developer in the team or a new QA, I don't want to read 300 pages of a document to know how to use a test automation framework or to be able to automate anything. I want to be able to press a button or to have a small set of documents which will give me in some automated way, a script or something will give me up and running, and will ensure that I'm able to do my work within minutes, or in the worst case in hours. Because usually when we get a new developer or a new QA in the team, it's days up until they are ready and making sure that they are actually either generating code or being able to automate, in my experience, at least so far. So, and if we do all that, if we are able to put it together, this platform, what exactly am I going to achieve with this? The whole idea is that you can leverage a quality culture and practice by enabling your teams, your squads, in the term that we are using here to reference Spotify, so they will generate improvements in agility, productivity, and quality, because we are facilitating automation. And automation here, it goes to talk about test automation, to talk about test environment automation, test data automation, because we can't forget that even if you develop a test case which is automated, if you don't have the actual data automated, you don't have an actual automated test. So what does that mean for my team when I'm gonna do that on my team or my company? What's gonna be the impact for my teams? The idea is that you're gonna reduce time spent on tasks which are means to an end. So my goal is not to put it together several environments. My goal is not to keep generating data for, a huge amount of data. My goal is not just to say I'm gonna do automation. Is to make sure that our teams, they focus on what they need to focus, which is making sure that they are testing. They are testing in an efficient way. They're not repeating manually tasks that they could automate in an easier way. We are also decreasing idle time, because usually when we are talking about test automation and automation in general, people, they automate just a piece of what they are doing. This is not centralized, and they have different pieces of the process not automated, as I was saying, environments, data. So the whole idea is that the teams will not be idle. They will have, easier way how to be able to test automate, and also to be able to prevent and identify issues sooner. Because if the teams are not spending time on generating test data or on generating environments, and they have everything at hand so they can focus on testing, automating, they will be able to think smarter. They will be able to prevent the issues. They will be able to identify other issues, that because now they have some free time in a sense, but they will be able to focus on what matters. And at the end, the business impact, which is a question that we always get, okay, I'm gonna do everything that you are saying. I'm gonna invest in test automation, and the first question is, if I don't automate 100% of everything, my business folks and the people who are actually the product owners and the product managers, they are gonna say that they're not gonna invest in automation. But if we do everything smart, if we make sure that we have this centralized platform, we're gonna be able to have a reduced lead time, because we're going to be focused on different tasks. Things will be automated. We're going to be able to have more frequent releases. We're going to start imploding bottlenecks to automation, because I already automated the environment. I already automate the test data, and I'm going to focus on making sure that test automating is easier. I'm going to be able to actually creating a framework. I'm not going to just create something that we call a framework, but it's not a framework. And everything is going to be centralized in a kind of a central place of where I can find everything. So how can we start doing that? How can we say, okay, I'm gonna try what you are saying. I'm gonna try and build a platform. Where do I start? So you need to have a clear mission. You need to be able to understand that you'll be leveraging and enabling not you don't have a product, you don't have an end user product. You have a product which will be used by other developers and QA folks. So the whole idea is that your mission is to make sure that their day to day is going to be easier, that they will be able to use quality in an efficient way, and that they're going to have an easier life by trying to do automation. So that's a kind of a different mindset where you need to be a protagonist. You need to be at the forefront of what you're doing. You need to experiment. So you need to look at what you have. Do I have a framework? Does it work? Is it too hard to put it to set it up? Do I need to do several list of tasks to be able to say that I'm ready to do automation? If the answer to that is yes, then you need to start your platform by making sure that your setup is automated, not just making sure that you go to as many teams as possible to get them to automating. Also, you need to be able to focus. You can't just say, I'm going to automate everything and I'm going to create a platform that is going to help everyone at the company at the same time. You need to look at your team, and we're going to understand how to do that in a second. But the whole idea is that you need to be able to focus. You can't just try and resolve everything at the same time. So if your platform, it's going to be mostly focused on test data, test environments, and actual test automating. So you need data to be able to automate and execute your automated tests. You need environments to be able to execute your tests. So if those things are not automated, make sure that you focus on that first. Then you focus on making sure that test automation is going to be easier. Make sure that you kill the bottlenecks first, and ruthless prioritize. So basically that means you need to make sure that you always prioritize, and that you need to make sure that you understand what you are doing, how you are doing, and making sure that you have a clear vision on where you are and where you are going. And less is more. So basically the idea is making sure that you have a strong success case, and making sure that you are able to repeat and scale that case to a different set of teams, or a small portion of your organization. So you make sure that you have, people to sponsor you. You have data to show. You have some kind of success case to build your case to other teams as well. And what are the usual platform services that you're gonna have? So they are kind of in an order based on our experience here. So usually we start self-servicing test environment provisioning. So you need to look at your environment, and you need to make sure that those things are self-service. I know it's going to be hard in some cases, especially on bigger and larger enterprises, but you need to understand what are the bottlenecks, and we're going to understand how to do that in a second. But then you can start doing self-service test data. So what are the major types of data that your testing needs? What are the data that you need to execute the test automation framework that you have today? Making sure that those things are going to be self-service, making sure that those things are going to be in a platform. Then you can get better at improving your test automation framework, making sure that it's actually something self-service, that it's easy to use, that somebody doesn't have to read a 300-page documentation to be able to create your test cases, to develop your automated test cases. And then you can go to a more advanced scenario where you look at APIs and how to create an automated test framework that is going to help with APIs. In some cases, you will look at performance testing as well, but always making sure that everything that you add to your mix, that people don't have to read a documentation to use it, that they don't have to go through a 300-step process to use it, or that it's something that you say, no, you have this repository here, you just clone it and then you can do it, and you let me know if you need help. No, it needs to be something that people will go to some centralized place. In our experience, we usually create some kind of portal, like a web portal, where people can select which test cases they want to execute. And in some cases, they already have the tasks that they need to do in the portal. And in some cases, they will need to develop something by putting existing tasks together to develop a new task or something. It will depend mostly on what you are testing, if it's web, mobile, or how to do it. But the whole idea is I don't need to worry about where I'm going to execute my test. I don't need to worry about where I'm going to develop my tests. Everything is going to be service. And it's also important to have definition criteria. So what is my definition of backlog? How do I know what gets into my backlog? How do I know that something is done on my backlog? How do I know something is ready to be developed on my backlog? And how I know something is available to go to production as well. And at the end, if you go through this journey, you'll be able to enable between quality throughout your DevOps pipelines, because not only your task is going to be automated, but everything is going to be in a centralized platform that you probably will leverage through APIs, and that's what we are doing today. We have a portal, like a nice portal with a front end or something that people can go in and do not all that I'm saying here, but most of what I'm saying here. But we also have APIs. So if somebody has a different need or wants to execute something at the pipeline, he can call our APIs, and that task will be executed for him. Or even in some cases, he can put together some different test steps and create a new test through the APIs as well. And the whole idea is to make sure that all that it's easy to use, it's easy to do. So they're not concerned on learning the framework, or they don't even know if we are using Selenium or Cypress or whatever the framework that we are doing. It's kind of an interface with what they actually need to do, which is testing. And okay, so everything is nice and everything that I'm saying is pretty good. So I don't have any. Guys are probably saying I don't have anything. I don't have anything yet. I just have like a small framework, or I have a strong framework, but I want to understand how to move that framework into something more in a platform like scenario. So what's the game plan to be able to do that? I'm gonna give you three major steps. Obviously, each step has more detailed steps. If you guys have any questions, we can talk about it at the end, or you can look me up online. But the whole idea is you need to know where you're starting. So you need to define what are the teams that you will be working first, and who are going to be your first clients, and what are their roles. Are we servicing QA teams? Even if we're talking about Agile, are those QA folks? Are those development folks? What are is our client, our dev client? In some cases, you're going to need to request and validate permissions. We go through that a lot when we are servicing environments and data, because we are generating or simplifying process that usually take like 10 to 15 steps, and we just expose that process in one step. So we go through the process of validating and making sure that we have all the access that we need. Uh, in some cases, there is some kind of onboarding, so you can present the platform to your teams and how they can use it, and where you are today and where you're going. You need to make sure that you understand your mission and goals. You need to make sure that you understand what's your success. My success is to make sure that my every team on my company is going to be doing test automating, or they are not having any issues with test data, or in some cases that you are decreasing the time that is spent on generating test data, because you are centralizing and making sure that that's self-service. So you need to understand what's your success criteria and where it's your final destination, because your goal is not going to be to get to the final destination, but you need to have an idea of what exactly does platform mean to you. And I can't tell you and each every one of you what's going to be your end platform and how that going to look for you. But in my case, it's something really focused on test automation, to make sure that even people who doesn't have, and I'm giving you guys an example. My example is we needed to make sure that people who had not much knowledge of automation or programming languages were going to be able to create automated test cases. So that's where we wanted to go. And then once you have all that discovered, you need to understand uh, and map for each of those teams what are the profile of that team. Is that team focused on back end or front end? What is the kind of pain points that those teams have? And then you'll be able to refine your initial backlog. And then you need to understand exactly from those items, which are the items which will bring the most impact. For example, in our case, the first thing that we implemented as a platform was a test data that it took, I think, 20 steps to be generated, and we ensured that it took only one, because we kind of abstracted everything into the portal, and people were just generating data through the portal for that specific scenario. And then people start seeing that taking the time to help us kind of create that scenario, and understanding how to build that in a platform really paid off. So that's where we started. And also, you need to map, refine, experiment. So always try to start small and keep getting better in small pieces. Don't try to get all your data into a platform. Don't try to put all your automated test scenarios into the platform at once. Understand what's going to make more sense and put things into the platform piece by piece, like you are building a product, but a product for developers and QAs. And also, as continuous improvement goes, we need to make sure that we have a baseline. So you need to understand what you're going to measure. So if I'm generating test data to the platform, how much time am I reducing and am I not spending on manually generating test data? How much test data am I generating? I'm generating 10 users per month. Am I generating 200? We need to understand how we're gonna show what we are doing with the platform. It's basically treating really as a product. What are the metrics that you gonna use to ensure that the platform actually works, that it gives your users what they need to do to be able to test, automate, or to generate test data, or to generate test environments. And also, the whole idea is for each of those metrics, if you're gonna say I'm gonna generate this amount of data, or I'm gonna generate these types of environments, that you make sure that you have a target for each of those pieces, so you can show that you are going through and meeting your target, and really helping your teams by having the platform. Because at the end, you're gonna need some kind of team that is going to build the platform. And what I'm proposing here is that instead of focus on creating a larger framework and then you have to maintain the framework, you actually do that by creating a platform and by maintaining a platform, which will pay off in the future. And I think that's it. I think I'm almost done with my time. I'm not sure if we have questions or not. I think we are waiting for Jenna. I don't think she is live. Let's see if oh, okay, she's back.
There we go. Yeah, was waiting for it to pop up that I was live again. Thank you
Okay.
so much. That was great. So, if you have questions and you didn't get them into the chat, go ahead and drop them in now. We've got a minute or two. Rafael, are there any kind of final thoughts you want to leave us with, or anything extra you want to add?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it my contacts on the material if anyone wants to talk about the platform. I know it's something really new in some cases. I love the cat, sorry, and because we have dogs, so you know that they do that as well. Sorry, and the whole idea here is, guys, I know it's pretty fast, and you know I'm trying to summarize everything that we did. But the whole idea is to make sure that everything that you do, it starts being self-service. Because if we keep doing the usual frameworks and trying to, you know, give the teams frameworks and things which are not going to be self-service, when things scale up, and that's the pain that I had in the past. At some point, things break, and you just can't support everything. So let's try and build something more self-service, either if it's test automating, if it's test data, and so on.
Yeah, I agree, and I know she just kind of appears. Nothing I can do about it. For those of you who don't have cats, you don't own cats; they kind of own you, and just sort of like appear.
He
So
adopted you, not you adopted the cat. Yeah.
oh yeah, 100%. She picked it. She picked us, or I should say, she picked my spouse. I am the second choice. If I'm home and he's not, then she's on me. Um, Otherwise, I'm shop liver. But I completely agree on this idea of giving teams systems and working solutions as opposed to kind of like, here's the framework we've chosen, good luck. Because ultimately, we run into a situation where there isn't consistency in the way we implement, there isn't consistency in the way we use it. And while I'm all in on Agile, I also know that like large orgs, thinking about enterprise organizations, we need that consistency because people move around and things change, and we need to be really flexible to be able to shift fast. But you can't if it's kind of siloed, contained knowledge to just that team that's using it. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I really, really love where you were going with that. I think it's great.
Yeah, and to finalize the whole why I started looking into some different way of organizing things is because I had some experiences where we did exactly what you said. We got a framework or even Selenium or whatever it was, and we built something like a small something, and the teams were using. And at some point, somebody said, okay, we can't use Selenium anymore because the company doesn't like it anymore, and now we're gonna use something else. And the
Mm-hmm.
teams that were already using, they looked at me and said, "But you were the guy who said I was supposed to use Selenium. Now I learned everything, and now I need to learn something else." And and that's kind of because test automation is it's gonna be difficult in a way for the usual team, because they already have all the other things to do. So if we
Mm-hmm.
are able to make it easier for them, they don't even know if they're using Selenium or Cypress or whatever it is. I think that helps, especially on the larger organizations that have a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. Well, we do have another speaker coming up. I'm
Okay, thank
hoping
you.
that PJ is ready. Thank you so much for spending time with us. That was great. I really,
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it. You
Me
got a
too.
call out from Mark too.
Okay,
Hi, Mark.